It's your instant match reaction for Everton 0, Manchester United 2, Everton out of the League Cup. Disappointing night at Goodison Park for those 2,000 there. After a week of such positivity, joining me now, Hannah Farrell and Rob Vera. Just disappointing. I think we're just sort of all speaking there, Rob, about that and the performance. And I think we can all recognise the performance wasn't good at all tonight. But, I'm angry at the results. I'm angry at some of the things that happened in that game. But, I don't want to be too harsh on these lads and these managers and this manager, because they put a lot into the last few weeks. And as much as we would have liked to have rotated the side like United did tonight and bring in high-class players from the cold like they did, it wasn't possible. So obviously disappointed, not happy with how Everton played, but, not kicking and screaming by any means.
No. I mean, look, sometimes I feel like we're never ever going to win the League Cup. It's a cursed chalice for us for whatever reason. But there are going to be times where another club who's spent literally hundreds of millions more than you on players are going to have an advantage. And that especially is the case when you have a quarterfinal of a cup or a consequential cup game like this, that happens to be placed midweek during literally the busiest time of the entire season. And yeah, it sounds like sour grapes. It sounds like complaining, but that's just the reality of it. We've talked about this all season. Everton's starting 11 are pretty good, and you can even get performances out of a couple more past that. But let's be honest about the difference. And Hannah referenced this when we were offline, and I'm sure she'll go into it more. But look who they can start. Look who they can decide. We'll bring on Martial and Rashford in the last few minutes, and we bring it on Tom Davis and Cenk Tosin, and there's a big difference there. Having said all of that, I did find that there were times in the game where, especially once we started to kind of get control of things, that it was a game that was begging for that final pass. It was begging for that final moment, and whether it was Wobie or Sigurdsson or it just you name it, name any of them, especially from the midfield forward, and they were making passes that it would be hard to classify as anything other than tired passes. That's it. You notice it physically, though. I think that I could say that they gave everything they had physically tonight, but mentally is where you also notice tired passing, tired decision making, etc. And Everton just needed to be able to rotate more in than they were able to tonight to be able to make that kind of difference, and it just unfortunately wasn't enough.
Hannah, what are your initial thoughts on that, mate? Obviously gutted, but
I think it's the same, really. I think the main thing is that we've got to point out is the bench, the quality that you've got on the bench. Players like Tom Davies did come on and he did put a shift in. You can't deny that from the lads. But when you've got a player like Richarlison going off, bringing on someone like Bernard is not the threat that you want on a United side like that. And I think what Rob said there is something which I think stood up really in that first chaotic 20 minutes where it seemed like we exhausted all our 9 lives right there. It was just insane. But I think it was that mental fatigue where players like Michael Keane, who hasn't stepped a toe out of line since about June at this rate, was really struggling for the first 10 minutes. I mean, everyone was saying, it was the nerves. Maybe it was actually the exhaustion that they're facing, and I think it was just that thing, the big rest, where he's going to rotate players and all that, with potentially going to be Boxing Day, was one game too far. Even when you think of the Arsenal game on Saturday, that last 15 minutes was a very scrappy, demanding 15 minutes for them all, so there's not been any respite really from that. So obviously that's one of the main factors, and it's the depth on the bench, but it's just it's annoying, but we could be in a worse situation. We could have been getting knocked out of this with an awful league place before Christmas as well. But yeah.
Well, yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? Where I think if you get to penalties there and you scrape through on that, you're saying what a battling performance from these lads again. They dug in and when a left-footed, Everton's defender's not great for it, but it's a fantastic goal by Cavani. He was a threat all night, but. Rob, I've had people on me saying on Twitter about excuses in regards to the players being tired and those kinds of things, but I think it's something you've got to factor in here, haven't you? And even one of the players we had in tonight, Seamus Coleman, has been out injured for 6 weeks or so. His last game was the last game against Manchester United, wasn't it? So it was a couple of months. And I think when you play the type of football that Everton have played the last few weeks, and it's all about shape and aggression and being switched on. And that's not just being switched on physically, it's about being alert to your man and knowing where he is and, cutting the space off and those sorts of things. It does take a lot out of you. And I think, as Hannah said there, against the pretty weak Arsenal side at the weekend, they came on strong. So, I don't want to sit here and sort of defend Everton side after playing like that, so to speak, but I can sort of see where it comes from. And I can sort of see why the manager set up like that as well, because not only has it worked in the last few games, Manchester United, as we've seen this season, if you come out and open the pitch up against them and go, yeah, let's have a football match, lads, they just pick it off like they did against Leeds at the weekend. So I think it's a hard one, and I think it's a lot of the reaction, while I understand the anger, I think it is conditioned by what we've just seen in the last 15 minutes and United getting those 2 late goals. And then you can say, we should have had a bit of a go with them a little bit more.
Yeah, I look, I'm not happy. No one's happy. It's frustrating, and especially even more so because we've played really well lately. But I guess I would challenge anyone, especially on Twitter right now, what exactly would have been the 11 you would have started? What exactly would have been the formation you would have? I mean, because you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. I mean, if he makes wholesale changes and we lose 2-0 or something, and then everyone says, I can't believe he broke up a team that's won 3 straight against 3 really good sides, or 3 quality sides, or 2 in Arsenal. But whatever. I think but the bottom line is that all, we've gone from being, high flying to being disappointed in Everton again, to being, oh my God, in the space of a week, because we had so many matches all come at once, being up to second in the table. Now, we're top 4 right now. I would have taken this. I still, I maintain I would have absolutely taken this. And when you are a squad that does not have the same sort of depth options, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. And so I think that it would have helped, obviously, if United had maybe played a weaker side or whatever. But that's kind of the embarrassment of riches they've got in depth. They
made 9 changes tonight.
Yeah, they made a ton of changes, and they're all and they still have Paul Pogba out there. I mean, it's silly, and it's different worlds, and so I'm not thrilled with how things went, but I honestly can't look at anyone in that 11 and say, well, if I'm the one who thinks that Mason Holgate should be our starting right back when everyone's fit, but I don't think he would have made the difference tonight. I think Calvert-Lewin, this has been my concern, and why I think we probably have to spend some money in January, even though I know it's not ideal. I don't care how young Calvert-Lewin is. I don't care how great an athlete he is. I don't care what kind of form he's in. I mean, I do care about all those things, but the reality is that he is playing every single minute for this thing. And at a certain point, you're going to start to hit a wall. It's a lot to ask of him to continue to bail us out. It's a lot to ask when Richarlison gets it looks like he got concussed out of that game. It's a lot to ask when the referee watches as Edinson Cavani grabs Yerry Mina's throat and throws him to the ground and doesn't even bother to yellow card him. I mean, there's a lot that was already going against Everton, but if you're not going to have VAR, you're not going to have referee that decides he, gives a crap about anything. I mean, none of those things helped. But the bottom line is that United were in a better position to win this game because of the sheer amount of depth that they have. And it's not, you could try to make it more complex and more nuanced than that, but I can't look at anyone in the starting 11 for Everton and say, oh, well, they'd started Jordan Pickford, this would be different. They'd started, Mason Holgate, this would have been different. I don't see what the change would have been. I mean, Gordon, maybe, and Cuckoo, I guess. I just don't know that those things were really going to make the difference tonight.
Yeah, Hannah, you're nodding along there, mate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter quite early on in the game absolutely rooting Gomez to shreds. And no, he didn't have a good game, but I don't think anybody could say that he was the person to blame at all in that. And it comes down to what I feared the second Alan went down in that game, that this would happen. he was commanding that whole area. And when he first got injured, it was like, oh, Doucouré's completely took on that role straight away. But when you've got players like Sigurdsson and Gomez around, it just becomes too much for him to do them, really, doesn't it?
Rob mentioned there about players that have played every game this season. Doucouré is another one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because he's such like a fixture in our midfield now, you don't really think about him getting tired or losing intensity because he's just on it, seemingly all the time. But he's another lad who's played every Premier League game for us.
Michael Keane's played every game.
Exactly. And that's why you could have
Yeremita's played a ton lately. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
You know what I mean? They've all exerted themselves massively, and it's paid off. But unfortunately, when it comes down to cups and stuff, you've got to be relying on more than that. And we know we don't have it. As you said there, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is literally playing every second for this team. If he gets injured, God forbid, are we relying on a Tosin or something? Because then that really does get scary. So that's the thing. We have to spend money in January if we can find it somewhere.
Yeah, can I point out one thing, Hannah, by the way? I there's been a lot of talk that, like, there's no way Moise Keane ever comes back to Everton. I'm like, are you sure about that? Like, I really could have, again, he needed to go to Paris in order to do what he's doing now. I get all of that. But, like, at some point, depending on what the move is in January, this idea that you only need, this idea that there can only be one main striker. I mean, I'm sorry. There's United can start Cavani and then bring Rashford and Martial off the bench. It's okay to have more than one guy. You can have Calvert-Lewin be the main man, but this idea that you can't have other strikers or else they're going to get too upset to be there anymore. I mean, at a certain point, there's it may not be Keane, but it's going to have to be someone, and you hope it's done in January because, look, Everton are going into Christmas in a Champions League position, and that's no small feat given everything the squad's been through. I think it's a testament to Carlo Ancelotti and everyone else. But what tonight I think was a warning sign of what happens if you don't do anything else. Like if you think to yourself, we can just go with this squad, and not make any changes. I think that's naive. I think I look at this and I say, if you don't either get some guys back from injury soon, hopefully you do with Dean and Allen and others, but if you don't also maybe add a player, you're asking to fall to 7th or 8th or 9th. I mean, and that's just the reality in such a tight table right now. And so Everton have got to consider this opportunity in front of them. And if they're really serious about it, they're going to have to.
Yeah, I think it's one of them where I think, if you've got a manager like we have, you can make average players look good over a certain period of time, but making tired average players and lads who are average players who've got injuries look good for a certain amount of time, that's where it becomes really difficult.
And it's just to say then as well, it was when the fixtures got compared for this busy period, it was us.
I'll be right back, guys.
Who had the least amount of rest, didn't we? And if you compare that, we've got the least amount of rest, these two teams, but then it goes back to the bench again, and why that only having 4 days rest altogether isn't as much as a problem for a team like United than it is for us. So yeah, for me, it all comes down to how deep your squad can go, basically, and like tonight.
Yeah.
And I was thinking when it got to 70, 80 minutes, thinking if this did go to pens, have we got 5 players who would even pick us in this side?
I was saying we should get Pickford on to take one. Don't bring Olsen on, because he might save a few. Bring Pickford on to take a penalty at the end.
We'd be clutching at straws for pens as well, which was another scary realisation as we got closer to what that could have happened. So,
just the last 5 minutes before we finish up, because I know you guys we're very busy for different reasons tonight. But the 2 moments in the second half, which, and again, I'll caveat this by saying United were the better team and absolutely deserved to win. And I'm not entirely sure if this would have had an effect on the result. But 2 pretty nasty moments in different ways, really. Cavani, like Rob said, grabs me around the throat and sort of tries to put a choke slam on him, like the Undertaker back in the day. And Fernandes, which is, I don't think quite, it's snide, but I don't think he really means to hurt Richarlison in the way he does. Hannah's shaking her head a little bit there, but what did you make of that? We'll come to you first, Hannah.
I just think Fernandes is getting away with all lot, isn't he? He's an incredible player, but he's walking away from a lot of games lately, getting labels of that player who's getting away with an awful lot from officials. That's the first thing I'll take from it. But for me, it was a sentence off. But I don't like the way people are saying then about Cavani and that, a player who shouldn't be on the pitch. That's not the reason we lost tonight, and I just want to put that on there. It's not. But it was a terrible challenge, and I think just our luck when it's in a game where there's no VAR at all, that things like that are happening. I think that, and if that with me now, I like gasps, you know what I mean? And you could hear it from Neville as well, sort of this confusion, like, have we actually just seen him do that? It was all very strange. But for me, what really like tipped me over the edge of being really pissed off about the whole situation was Gary Neville laughing at when Richarlison was clearly down on the floor, concussed. I think that is just the most like terrible commentary that I've like. It's so irresponsible when lately it was only with David Luiz, and for a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the importance of how we need to be treating head injuries.
I had a fractured skull.
Yeah, like we were literally saying, what, less than a month ago, we need to start taking head injuries so much more seriously. And then you've got a former United player commenting on a United game, laughing when there's a player on the floor who's looking very out of it. I just thought that was like what really pushed over the edge of how frustrated I was at how unfair the situation was playing out, basically.
Rob, what did you make of those incidents, mate? I mean, obviously, people put hands on Yerry Mina, full stop. But, you know,
I mean, I am still red from how upset I am that anyone would touch Yerry Mina like that. Only Mrs. Mina gets to touch Yerry that way. No, look, I find, Matt, we talk about this all the time. I know that I grew up in a very privileged sports culture where, I don't know, the same rules are applied in the sport all the time, as opposed to, well, we're not going to start doing instant replay until we get to the semifinals of this competition. Like, it's so arbitrary that it's so dumb. And it's like, well, we just didn't want to spend the extra $20 tonight or whatever to have VAR at the game in a quarterfinal of a cup competition that's on that's on television internationally, and yet they can't afford to pay the extra taxi fare for the fifth official or whatever to that. Like, I find it all completely asinine, and that isn't even getting into the whole notion of how differently certain players are and certain clubs, frankly, are officiated, which we all know that. And I don't want to get into that whole thing tonight of, well, you know, United catch all the, like, United made their deal with the devil a long time ago. Okay. There's a reason why they have had, you know, Fergie time and all that kind of crap, you know, over the years. And I understand that. But what I don't like is that I still am watching a sport where couple of years ago, Richarlison put his head up to the head of someone else. Far more like I've put my forehead to another woman's forehead in a slow dance with more aggression than what Richarlison did at Bournemouth.
I was really wondering where that was going then.
And he got 3 games for that.
I was like, we're all annoyed about the results here, Rob, but come on.
No, I've never really headbutted a woman. But my point is that it's just so silly how, like, one thing is a 3-match suspension and another is just like, well, he choke slammed him. You know, sometimes you miss things, right? Like, we ought to be talking about how Cavani's going to get a retroactive ban for that, but you know nothing is going to happen from it. And I find that just the kind of well, certain things matter and certain things don't, or concussions are a really serious issue. But if it happens to Richarlison, well, you know, it's Richarlison, right? I mean, we talked about that last week, Matt, when we were talking about the way that Richarlison is covered compared to other players. You know, if Harry Kane had been concussed in a game, the flags would be at half-mast right now in Britain. So that's why I think that's the thing that drives me insane about how Richarlison is talked about and covered by the media. But the officiating was just, it looked incredibly indifferent tonight at times. I think that's the worst thing. That's the best thing I could say about it. It was very indifferent most of the time. Having said, you know, and if Cavani's sent off, then who knows what happens. But the bottom line is that Everton weren't good enough to win tonight, and that's really what it comes down to. And all these other things are just window dressing for topics to discuss and to be angsty about. And none of us like them. But I think that the best thing that Everton can do now is not allow this to linger, they have got a game this weekend that they need to absolutely get 3 points from if they want to continue on to this good form. Playing against the worst team in the league, it is the ultimate banana peel, banana skin, as you call it there. It's got to be taken care of. And hopefully they respond well and don't let this linger.
Yeah, just on that, it was just talking about the difference in officiating. You could then see, I think it was, what is the Pogba challenge after that, where he got a yellow for, and that was just clearly trying to gain a bit of credibility back. But then it's that narrative that the pundits have made on Richarlison, basically, haven't they? That he's a player who goes down and stuff like that. When you attach a narrative like that to a player, these things happen. It's been a long time coming that Richarlison's actually gonna get seriously injured. We've all been saying that the lad gets up and brushes off everything and gets stuck in. It's a long time coming that he's gone down off a challenge, which was so unfair in him, and it's just frustrating if you look at the fact of like Dini, obviously okay, we got retracted and it was only one game and all that, but the fact that things like that would have read and this doesn't even get a card, it's just so frustrating. But as Rob said there, I think we've all made the joke for ages saying, oh yeah, we'll win against, we'll come off the back of winning and beating in Chelsea, Arsenal, Leicester, and then we'll go into Sheffield United and drop 3 points there. It's a joke we all say, but it is the type of thing now that if we come off losing our confidence and everything, that actually could happen. So, and then it's the scary thing is, that was the game where we could potentially rest players and all stuff like that. So I think it does put a bit of a different perspective on the weekend, really.
Hey Matt, just some slight breaking news. Moise Kean and Gana Gay scored for PSG tonight. I just want you to thought you'd enjoy that. Since we don't need another midfielder or a striker, I thought that would just make you feel better.
I'll move on quickly. Just finally, just a bit of a look ahead to Sheffield United. He's got to freshen things up a little bit, hasn't he, Rob, for that game, you'd think?
Yeah, well, and again, I kind of come back to, so what does that look like? So I expect if Holgate's not going to play a minute tonight, that he's absolutely playing on Saturday. I think my question becomes, where does he play? Is Coleman, for instance, because of the fact that you're nursing him back from a long, semi-long-term injury, do you want to play him twice in the span of a few days like that? I mean, I might be cautious about that. Having said that, I kind of, at some point, you'd think Mina and Keane, I mean, they're relatively young men, but you'd think one of them would probably need to get a rest at some point. Godfrey's certainly been putting in the miles lately. So I don't know that it's just obvious where you freshen up the squad. I think that I honestly, if just based on the look of it, and I know sometimes it always looks worse than it really is with Richarlison, but he did not look like someone who was going to play this weekend if he dealt with something that was more of an injury. I guess we'll hear more about it, but look, doesn't this have to be a time where you say, look, let's bite the bullet? We may, and as much as I just talked about needing to get 3 points there, do you say, look, this is the game where we rest Calvert-Lewin and we say, Chink, look, go in there and try and hold on, and maybe you bring Calvert-Lewin on after 70 minutes or something like that. But you've got to get some of these guys a rest. And I don't know. And I think with a thin squad, that's tough to do. I would expect maybe Tom Davis to come in and start this weekend. I don't know what's going on with Gomez. He just something doesn't look right with him. But I don't know if that's there. But it's besides like Gordon or Chink Tosin, I don't know what else you really do to freshen this up. Pickford's going to come in obviously for Olsen in the weekend, but other than that, I don't know what wholesale changes you can realistically make. Yeah.
Do you just sort of look at Hannah and think maybe you can give Nkunku a game, or I don't know if Andy Gordon maybe gets to start. Bernard could maybe fit in somewhere. Listen, those lads are young players, and maybe some of them aren't good enough. Can we get Fabian Delph on the pitch for 60 minutes? And I don't rate him at all. But I suppose at this moment, it's sort of like, it's not the best player up. It's sort of like who's in the best shape, who can run and who can give us the most minutes. Because as much as it feels like we've had a grueling spell, it's going to get more and more grueling as the days go by, isn't it?
Definitely. Like, it does sort of feel like you're just filling a gap for the weekend, really, isn't it? Rather than replacing it with somebody who could sort of match it. I think
Rodriguez could come back as well, hopefully.
Yeah. Would have helped tonight, wouldn't it?
that changes things entirely. But like I feel like we're all pulling our hair out a bit with saying Gordon. I feel like if there's ever a game to give that lad his full shot to sort of show that he can do everything that Brands and everyone's the praising about, then that would be an obvious choice. And then obviously Holgate again. But starting with Cenk is something that I didn't initially think up, but then when Rob was saying there, it bringing Dominic on later on probably is a sensible way to go about it, because I'd rather give Cenk that bit of responsibility and fingers crossed and eyes shut, basically hoping for the best, than getting to a City and then West Ham and having an exerted Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think you've got to sort of take a bit of a gamble on that basically and weigh it up. I think Tom Davies is definitely somebody who I'd start. I think it was after the weekend Carlo said, for him, Tom's very much that player who, when he's called upon, he's doing what he's asked. And I think the last couple of games, I know he's still got massive critics through everybody, but I think he's very much doing that. So he'd be a player that I'd be confident in sort of commanding sort of that midfield, definitely over Gomez anyway. But I would say that I do think, although Sigurdsson had a few wobbly moments where he was misjudging his distance and everything tonight, he definitely for that last 20 minutes fully exerted himself, and I think that he's the type of player that he could be instrumental in a game with Sheffield United, where he's got to sort of step it up again like he has done for the past couple of games, sort of having that leader role if we're rested a few more of your leaders and having people like Richarlison unfortunately not in the lineup.
Yeah, I suppose it'd probably be a case on Christmas Day where if he looks in the best nick when they come into training, and that's all, and we'll take it from there. But
Matt, I'll add one more thing. I don't know. They're being really kind of cagey about what's going on with James Rodriguez, by the way. I mean, we keep getting told it's not serious. And I would say that the fact that we've been winning all these games lately means that you have the luxury of not having to rush him back early if it's just like a muscle strain or quad strain, like a hamstring or whatever. If he doesn't play on Boxing Day, I'm going to start asking questions. Like, I'm getting a little worried. You know, he's been, again, not that he's always on social media like some of his other teammates are, but he's just kind of been gone lately. So and I just hope everything is okay.
I noticed he hasn't put anything Everton up for a few weeks. I noticed that the other day. I was a bit like, he was putting pictures of his kids up, your kids. So I had a little thing the other day, like, is everything okay?
I try not to read too much into that, though. I mean, I just think that it's one of those things. And I think that when he is away from Finch Farm and from the game, he's away from the game. And I think that that's okay. But having said that, we could really have used him tonight, obviously. He wasn't ready to come back, or they didn't want to risk him tonight. Fair enough. We really could use him in the league. And I would love to obviously see him back for Boxing Day. But you know, at a certain point during these press conferences that we insist are important, it would be nice to maybe ask more than one question about, who's injured, and then not ask any other questions. I'd like to know, like, what is the injury? And, you know, why you keep saying it's not serious, but yet he hadn't played. Like, he hasn't played in almost like a month's worth of games if you start adding up the number of games here pretty soon. So it's a little concerning for me.
And I think even at the weekend, you know, if you'd have him on the bench, if Everton are going into the last half an hour of that game and it's 0-0 and you're bringing him on, you're feeling relatively good about the chances are. And you're bringing a fresh James Rodriguez in against for half an hour against the tired bottom of the league team. You feel like you're going to find a breakthrough then. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. Obviously disappointing tonight though. Cheers to Rob, cheers to Hannah for coming on the Instant Match Reaction. Cheers everybody for watching on YouTube as well. Enjoy the rest of your night and enjoy your Christmas as well. I think this will be the last show we do before Christmas Day. Yeah. So thanks very much to everybody for listening.
Maybe doing the long con with Dave tomorrow.
Christmas Eve one.
Fingers crossed, the Christmas Eve episode of the long con. Dave has said yes. So me saying it on here hopefully will shame him into keeping that commitment tomorrow, and we're going to do it.
Save me a job there as well. In that case, I don't have to do the big thank you for everyone for listening throughout the course of the year. So you and Dave can do that tomorrow instead.
All right, we will make a go of that.
Cavani and Fernando, so we'll get off. But yeah, disappointing tonight. Fingers crossed the Blues can bounce back against Sheffield United at the weekend. But yeah, from me, I hope everybody has a great Christmas, and we'll speak to you again soon here on the Blues.